The Winnipeg Jets and the Florida Panthers have both been eliminated from the 24-team NHL playoff format, and the GM of the Panthers may be on his way out as well. We'll discuss all that and the other playoff results coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, we have some more NHL playoff hockey to review and discuss here today. We've had lots of action. Of course, last night we saw the Winnipeg Jets be eliminated by the Calgary Flames. They were shut out 4-0. It's not as bad as it seems, though. There was 2 goals into an empty net. They scored 2 goals on Hellebuck. Added 2 late ones when the Jets were trying to get things tied up. But ultimately, the Jets were just too banged up, ran out of manpower, and just did not have enough in there with all the guys out to overcome the Calgary Flames. I will give the Flames some credit. Cam Talbot played very well. Certainly no doubt any longer, at least, about the decision to start him in the first game. He was a big part of their reason that they're winning here. Moving on, obviously, the Flames need to have some playoff success, which is good for their franchise. So clearly, this is overall, a good thing for them, but ultimately the Jets, I think, would have stood a much better chance, and really, in all honesty, I think could have won this series without too much trouble, even if Scheifele and Laine and others would have been healthy here. I mean, Matthew Perreault did play in this last game, even though he was banged up. He was able to come back, but just too much to overcome, and clearly Calgary took advantage, scored some goals here, and obviously put the Jets away last night. So a 3-1 series victory for the Calgary Flames. Now, we had lots of other action go down here yesterday as well, including some round-robin games. We saw the Philadelphia Flyers defeat the Washington Capitals by a score of 3-1. The Flyers have been incredibly hot so far in this NHL return to play during the round-robin series. They were one of the hotter teams in the NHL before the pause, and they seem to have picked up pretty much where they left off, with a couple of goals from Scott Laughton, goal from Travis Sanheim. The Capitals offense was shut down, and they have another victory. So the Flyers in Tampa will battle it out for the number 1 overall spot in the Eastern Conference going into the next round of the NHL playoffs. So that's some great news for the Flyers. I know going into this round-robin series, I really had a hard time predicting who was going to really win those games and come out as the top seed. The Flyers were a team, I said numerous times, that were really hard to bet against. But when you have strong teams like Tampa and Boston and Washington, it was just hard to kind of go against them as well. So clearly the Bruins and the Capitals have struggled more so than the other two. The Flyers and Lightning have been the stronger teams so far in this round-robin tournament. Of course, the Lightning are without Stamkos still. So obviously whatever's going on with him must be somewhat serious. They seem to be taking a lot of extra caution. Of course, we don't really have a lot of information on the extent of the injury or what he's going through. So obviously some key details there that would be helpful in knowing when he's going to be able to play. But they are somewhat optimistic. At least it sounds like they are, that he'll be able to play when round 1 gets underway. Now, the other round-robin game that we saw yesterday was the Vegas Golden Knights beating the St. Louis Blues with a 6-4 score. Somewhat high-powered offense. Marc-Andre Fleury was back in the net for Vegas. 1 point later into the second period, the Blues did have a lead in the game. Vegas ended up with a big goal from young defenseman Zach Whitecloud to get things tied up at 4, and then Mark Stone scored the eventual winner not too long after. And then they added one more at the end. Shay Theodore with his second of the game. Certainly a really strong performance from him, proving that maybe he belongs to be more of a conversation to being, one of the stronger defensemen from around the NHL. He sometimes gets a little bit underrated or flies under the radar, I think, but he certainly is really their top guy for sure when it comes to offense and moving the puck and everything there on the blue line. So another strong performance from the Golden Knights. So in the Western Conference, we're going to see the Golden Knights and the Avalanche be the teams fighting for that number 1 seed, whereas the Stars and the Blues have struggled a little bit so far in this tournament and will battle it out for number 3 and number 4 spots. So we're going to probably get some very interesting playoff matchups with some of these really strong teams, falling down in the standings here compared to where they were in the actual regular season. So we'll have to wait for the play-in round to finish up before we know the full matchups, which we will know here probably before the end of the weekend. Obviously, Sunday at the latest will be the last day when teams are finishing up here in the qualifying round series. Now, in other action in the qualifying round series yesterday, we saw the Vancouver Canucks shut out the Minnesota Wild 3-0. Jacob Markstrom in net for the Canucks seems to be getting better as this series goes along, which is great news for them. Of course, their top guys played a stronger game again today. Quinn Hughes had 3 assists, was involved in all 3 goals. Brock Besser scored a big goal. Pettersson had a goal. Even Antoine Roussel got in on the action of scoring, which was great to see some more depth scoring from the bottom 6. For Vancouver, they had a pretty solid, sound game overall, and they now lead the Wild 2-1. So that's big. So the Canucks can now go for this series victory in Game 4. Now, one of the other big games yesterday, of course, was the Maple Leafs and the Blue Jackets, and what a game it was. Had lots of drama in it. The Maple Leafs looked to be having control early on, ended up going up a 3-0 score into the second period, so things were looking pretty promising for the Maple Leafs. But after they get up 3-0, we saw the Blue Jackets make a goaltending change. So Korpisalo came out, Elvis goes in, and after that, things really started to change. I found Columbus kind of found their defensive structure again and certainly played a better overall game at both ends of the ice. After the goaltending change, it really woke them up, which was good to see from their perspective. And then they started picking away at the lead. And of course, as we know with the Maple Leafs, unfortunately, due to past results, sometimes a 3-0 lead just is not safe. I think they got a little bit ahead of themselves. And obviously, Columbus started picking away, as I said. We saw Pierre-Luc Dubois have one heck of a game. Late into the third period, it was 3-2. And we had the Maple Leafs call a timeout to kind of get some players rested and get what they wanted on the ice. And that timeout actually ended up backfiring. Tortorella ended up going back to a lineup that we didn't think he would put out on the ice. He put Dubois' line back out, even though he had struggled against Tavares in the face-off circle for most of the evening. But it turned out that it worked out well, and they got the puck off the face-off. He actually won the draw, and then they later on went on to score the game-tying goal, his second of the game at that point, to tie things up, send into overtime. During overtime, Columbus was way better than Toronto. They really dictated a lot of the pace, had more of the chances, and Pierre-Luc Dubois ended up getting a partial breakaway and scored the winning goal on a really nice backhand shot to seal his hat trick and give Columbus the victory. It was another unfortunate epic collapse by the Leafs, something we've seen too many times. I know for Leafs fans, it must have been extremely heartbreaking to watch that happen. Unfortunately, it seems like a replay you've seen before and you want a different ending. But unfortunately, it didn't happen that way last night. But the series is not over. We still have some more game action, which is coming back here this evening. The Leafs go right back at Columbus to try to tie things up and force a Game 5 to settle the series. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens here. The Maple Leafs made some bad decisions when it comes to their D especially, made some bad pinches, which created some odd man rushes against. So obviously Travis Dermott playing a bigger role due to Jake Muzzin's injury. And overall, Dermott didn't really have a great game. They even got a shorthanded goal from Cody Ceci early on, which is extremely rare. He's got his first playoff goal and his first shorthanded goal ever. I know Ceci's a bit of a lightning rod for criticism among the Leafs fans. Obviously, he was that way in Ottawa as well before he was there. And I know many fans are probably anxious for him to leave via free agency this offseason. But obviously, he plays a big role, plays a lot of minutes with Riley. And just really not great defensively, obviously, which is where he gets a lot of his criticism from. But really, the other Leaf defenders didn't have a great game either, with the exception of Morgan Riley. I thought Riley played extremely well. Riley did end up getting caught on the game-winning goal where Dubois got a step on him and he could not catch up. But I don't think you could really fault Riley in that situation. So ultimately, Freddie Anderson didn't really play bad either. He's had some game letdowns in the past, but I don't think he can really say it was his fault. So an unfortunate defeat at the hands of the Blue Jackets for the Maple Leafs. We'll see if they can bounce back tonight and tie this series up and force a Game 5. Otherwise, the Leafs will be out and they'll be going into the draft lottery, which is a scary scenario for many of the fans and other teams that are in their conference, in their division, especially if you look at Montreal, Ottawa, Boston. I'm sure they don't want to see the Leafs get Lafreniere. That's a really scary thought. At the same time, would help their cap situation having Lafreniere on an ELC for a few years. They probably would end up making a big trade and moving out one of their other top young forwards, I would think, if they were to be lucky from having that happen. But of course, they'd be unlucky to be where they are. So difficult to say where they go. I'm not going to speculate on moves they're going to make here right now. But if the Leafs lose this series, I would expect change. I know we're going to see change anyway due to the cap and because of free agency and all that. But how much change are we going to see if they don't get past Columbus? Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section. Now, of course, we just saw as well the Florida Panthers have been ousted by the New York Islanders in early action here today. They're the first game of the day. They've been playing at noon Eastern time slot. And the Islanders put the Panthers away today in the fourth and deciding game with a 5-1 score, so they win 3-1. Clearly, the Panthers had one pretty good game where they beat the Islanders to make it interesting, but for the most part, the Islanders did dominate this series. The defensive systems from Barry Trotz were solid and in place. They have a much healthier blue line than before the season was paused. They had good goaltending from Varlamov. Some good scoring, spread out scoring as well today. They had goals from guys like Barzal, Pajot into an empty net. Bovillia had a couple more goals. So they're really getting some pretty spread out scoring. Nelson was another one as well in today's action. And the Panthers are gone. Now, as soon as the game was over, within like 10-15 minutes of it, there was already reports that general manager Dale Tallon is on his way out as Panthers general manager. Reports from Andy Strickland of The Athletic, and we're seeing other reports from Sportsnet now confirming that that's very likely to happen. I don't know when we're going to have an official announcement from the Panthers organization, but my only thoughts are it's about time. I mean, in my opinion, Tallon has not done a great job in Florida. He's been with the organization for over a decade now. There's a lot of questionable drafts, a lot of questionable free agent signings, some not so great trades. I mean, there's been a few things and moves that have worked out well. I will give him some credit, but nowhere near the success he had during his time with the Blackhawks. And really, for the most part, this team is a bit of a mess, to be honest. They've had a lot of moves that were made over the last number of years where they were supposed to be a contending team. They always seem to disappoint and come up short. And a lot of that, I just really think the team is just not as good as they thought they were going to be because of the players and signings and moves and everything that management has made. I think this team has been mismanaged for a long time. They obviously have an attendance issue down in Sunrise. And like I said, it's just a mess that needed new leadership. We know Tallon brought in Joel Quenneville, of course, his old buddy from Chicago, who's had a lot of success as a coach, got a big-time contract for, I believe it was a 5-year deal that was reportedly that he was given from the organization. So I'm sure he won't be thrilled with his friend and general manager Tallon leaving the organization. But it's time for some new leadership there. That Sergey Babrowski contract's looking terrible right now. Babrowski had a really bad series against the Islanders. For the money that he's being paid, the season he had is atrocious. And they're tied to that contract for a long time. Buying it out and trading it going to be pretty much impossible. I won't say impossible because we've seen some crazy trades involving some bad deals, but this one was so much money and so much term left on it. At least for the foreseeable future, it's not going to be movable. Maybe 2-3 years time when we're getting towards the latter half of it, maybe. But certainly, there's a lot of talk about guys like Mike Hoffman and Evgeny Dodonov. Have they played their last game as a Panther? The Panthers were already talking before the pause about cutting salary. They spent a lot of money last offseason, weren't happy with the results, and seem to be going in a completely different direction. So what moves are we going to see from Florida? Obviously, will depend on who the new leader and general manager is and what they think is best for the organization. But certainly a very interesting story to follow up here. I'll be interested to see when the Panthers make some official news on this topic that's being reported here through the internet right now. So let me know your thoughts on all these playoff actions, what we're going to see later on today. There's a lot of games going on. Still, there's 5 more games today as I record this video. More teams could be eliminated because they're all elimination eligible games. All teams have won at least 2 games in these series, so we could have a bunch more teams eliminated before the end of the day. Some of them could survive and play another game here on the weekend, but we will still slowly start to dwindle down this qualifying round over the next day or two if teams survive today. And then, of course, we have the Draft Lottery Phase 2 coming up on Monday evening, which I mentioned before. We will be doing a live stream for to get the live reaction on what team it's going to be. So let me know your thoughts on all these action down in the comments, and we'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, consider subscribing and turning on your notifications so you don't miss any future content. And give this video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it. I'd appreciate it if you did. As always, thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.